How big of a game is this for Brent Brennan and the Arizona coaching staff, and what does this mean for Arizona football going forward? All that and more.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. This show is brought to you today by FanDuel. Check it out. You can put down $5 and get $150 in free plays if your bet hits. Check out FanDuel.com. Okay, now we are going to get to Brent Brennan and some Arizona football here, unfortunately. Listen. This fan base, as we all know, this fan base is totally out. Now, there are some people, your Steve Molinas of the world, that think that, Brent Brennan, any coach should get as long as they possibly want, and whatever. But the overwhelming majority of people also have eyeballs, and they also are able to, they know what they watch on the football field. And it's been an absolutely atrocious product, coupled with the fact that it's a coach that doesn't really seem to care, has next to no engagement whatsoever. The only people that are really supporting him at this point are generally people that are professional contrarians. That's essentially where we are at with Brent Brennan. Now, before we get to the Houston game and the importance of it, we need to look back a little bit ways. Listen, Arizona got absolutely destroyed by Central Florida, and that is a bad Central Florida team. Arizona lost 56-12. Don't know what else to say. Then you lost to a bad West Virginia team by a team that was missing its quarterback, was missing some of its best players. And Brent Brennan, as he generally does, goes into the presser and looks silly. He talks about how it's impossible to judge this Arizona team now because of so many injuries, because there's been so much going on, so much turmoil and so much flux with the roster. No, dude. Injuries happen. That's part of the game. And you're losing to teams that have even more injuries than you. And you're absolutely getting boat raced by teams with their fourth string quarterback and getting rid of their offensive and defensive coaches. It is what it is. We all have eyes. All right, so now you have Houston coming to town this week. What does this Houston game mean then for Brent Brennan and for Arizona football? First, Houston, another team that is playing a little bit better of late. I got to give them that. But they're also not great by any means. Nobody's looking at Houston and saying that that is a world beater. As a matter of fact, they're probably saying the exact opposite. Houston, again, not good. But I think the question that you really have here is, what is the fan base going to do? Because I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Arizona football to get a good fan showing in this game, and there's a variety of reasons for that. First, Arizona basketball is going to be playing Wisconsin. And if you're somebody and you've got to divvy up your time and you got to decide, where do I want to be? Do I want to watch Arizona football or do I want to watch Arizona basketball? You're probably going to sit home and watch Arizona basketball. That's just my guess. Now, it is interesting because I believe Desiree Reed-Francois will be will be staying here for the Arizona-Houston game, as she should. This is a game where, for the people that aren't out on Brent Brennan, if you get annihilated in this game, everybody outside of about 3 or 4 just total dullards are going to be out on you. And a big part of it too is how does Arizona look in the process? Because some of these games are just annihilations. They're embarrassing. We all, like I said, I'm going to keep saying this. We all have eyeballs. We all know what we see, and what we see is something that is not very good. Now, it's also going to be a later game. My question is if you have 20,000, 25,000 people show up to this game, what do you do if you're Desiree Reed-Francois? Because football is still a moneymaker. I mean, I know that we all prefer Arizona basketball, or most of us prefer Arizona basketball. I get all that, but football is still something that generates a lot of money. Not only does it generate a lot of money, it also is it's also something where you have to be good. And if you're not good, if you're not competitive, If people aren't showing up, then that is just going to set you back even further. And I think you got to fear that that is the case with with Arizona right now and where things are certainly headed. So that's a big part of it. We're going to talk about the fan engagement or the lack thereof in a little bit, but for Arizona, there's no reason that this offense shouldn't be better. And I think a big concern is amongst many people is that it does seem like Brent Brennan is leaning towards basically bringing back this staff and basically running this one back, which maybe bring in a different play or coach or two, but that would be a disastrous idea. But either way, this is an offense that should just not be as bad as it is. Noah Fafita has I don't think that Noah's been well coached at all. You don't really have a quarterbacks coach, or it doesn't seem that you have a quarterbacks coach that's being able to kind of show him the ropes, show him what he needs to do, and that's a problem. And I think this staff has failed him because now Noah doesn't have any timing with his core or with his wide receivers. I think he's seeing pressure when it's not there, and I think that's what happens too when you just have a really inexperienced, or you have an experienced coaching staff, but you have lack of experience from guys that call plays. I mean, Dino Babers is a relic. Dino Babers, hadn't called plays in 20 years, something like that. Matt Adkins, I hope they keep Matt Adkins on the staff, but this is his first time. This shouldn't be the place where you cut your teeth learning how to call plays. So I think the question is, what exactly are you going to be looking at if you're Arizona? That's kind of where I think the little bit of the frustration does reside. Now, I think the next question too that a lot of people have is, what is the defensively? Arizona have encountered a ton of injuries, but I think here's the difference though, is that people also know what they see, and what they see is they see a coach in Dwayne Aquina that I think has done a very good job. And not only has he done a very good job, he's also been a situation where you're like, all right, you kind of get it. But you've also seen the injury. You've also seen the injury. You've also seen the injury bug at this point. You've seen where they're at. It's not it is what it is, but you've also seen that he's done a lot more with a less talented unit. So that's why I think people are giving Dwayne Aquina the benefit of the doubt. Plus, Dwayne Aquina just seems like a cool dude. I think people know from his track record that the man can coach football, and that's just kind of where it's at. But this Houston game is incredibly important for Arizona football and for Brent Brennan because, listen, if you get annihilated by Houston, then I think pretty much everybody is out at that point. And I think it becomes really difficult to be able to tell people. I think in many ways it becomes difficult to be able to tell people that hey, just keep coming out here, just keep putting in your hard-earned money. And not only that, it seems that this is just not a really good spot then for Arizona fans, nor should they be there. And if fans don't show up and Arizona does get blown out, that's what I think that we need to talk about next, and what the possibilities are for that, because there is probably a nuclear option at play. But first, ROY, my friends, ROY. Okay, here's the deal with ROY. So far this season, they pulled over $20,000 to support players on ROY. Micro deposits lead to massive changes. With the ROY app, you can direct support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all their funds go to the specific player you choose. Okay, here's the deal. Download ROI now and join the NIL game with subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X, ROY_return on you for more. ROI, support the players, change the game. This is how it can go straight to somebody. It's not a collective. It's not something where you don't really know where exactly the money is going to. Check it out at ROI. Another one of these ones, you're going to thank me later on it, ROI. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Michael Luke. All right, now let's talk about what Desiree Reed Francois' options are. Now, I get it. There's a $13 or $14 million buyout for Brent Brennan. That is not good. But I think there are a couple things that you need to really factor into the equation here. If you're Desiree Reed Francois, listen, if the buyout, I think the buyout goes, if I'm not mistaken, I should know this, but if it goes from 13 to 10 after a year, are you really going to sit back if you know that Brent Brennan isn't the guy? Because, there is the argument that if you give Brent Brennan another year, then you got to give him another year because next year Arizona football is probably not going to be good, like we talk about. You generally don't lose players like T-Mac. You generally don't lose players like, Big Jonah Savanea. Or a Tacario Davis and potentially get better. That generally is not the case. And you're going to be playing a bunch of new kids next year, so you almost have to give him another year if you're going to bring him back. And if you're going to bring so is that something that is tenable with the fan base? And I tend to think not. So if Arizona does lose out, I think that if you can, I think you got to look to get rid of him. He is and we'll talk about some of the things but he has just done nothing. And the problem though too is that I think and I was talking with a few people about this, I think it is literally impossible to do a worse job than Brent Brennan has done in his first year, all the way across the board. I don't know that it is possible to do a worse job than him. And again, the people in the city see it. You'll get some people that are like, oh, well, the media turned against him, this and that. No, they didn't. Brent Brennan made his own bet on this. Brent Brennan is now laying in it for a variety of reasons. I don't think that he really took this offseason seriously. I think it's impossible to have these kind of players coming back and say, yep, we knew what we were doing this offseason. We were good to go. We just had to make sure, I just don't think that was there. And I think that is a big problem, is that there doesn't seem to be an understanding of how important this was for Arizona football. And not only for Arizona football, but for the community. This was your one chance to be able to make a big. This was a big opportunity to. This was a big opportunity to be able to show that Arizona football could string together some good seasons in a row, and they weren't obviously able to do it. I think most coaches would have been able to be significantly better. Now, who knows? Maybe this team wasn't 12 win or 10 win good. Fair enough. Maybe it wasn't 9, 8 win good, but it sure as heck is better than 3 win good and getting destroyed by a Central Florida team on its third string quarterback. So that's kind of where you got to look at it from that perspective, and fans know that. So if Arizona wins 3 or 4 games this year and you lose T-Mac, you lose Big Jonah, etc., why would people go to the games next season with a coach that has essentially just been absent or, has just kind of been asleep at the wheel? And I think Desiree Reed Francois gets that. She understands the importance of football. The other part, too, about Brent Brennan, if this were to happen, is there are some coaches that can sell you on things. I always talk about this, and obviously Sean Miller was a successful coach, so I'm just meaning this from perspective. Some coaches can just make stuff up, and it doesn't really pass the smell test, but kids are going to believe it. And a big, perfect example is, Sean Miller. Sean Miller was a masterful recruiter. And Sean Miller would tell kids nonstop that you want to come to Arizona because we're going to get up and down, we're going to get alley-oop, fast break dunks, this and that. And kids believed it. I'll never forget interviewing Josh Green when he was in high school and saying a big reason he wanted to come to Arizona was to, play in that up-tempo, high-paced offense. And I just remember thinking on the other line, man, these kids really believe that stuff. But kids believe salesmen, and they believe Brent Brennan doesn't have any of that. Do you look at Brent Brennan and say, man, that's a guy that's probably really killing it with boosters or doing a great job in the living room with recruits? No, of course you don't see that. Nobody sees that. And I think that is the problem with Brent Brennan, is that there is just no actual fire. There's essentially next to nothing, and it appears to be a coach that, again, is just in well over his head, which brings us to social media. Let's talk social media here and Brent Brennan for a minute. Brent Brennan has been, Brent Brennan is not active on Twitter. That's fine. A lot of coaches aren't, but they have somebody that is. Brent Brennan is now all for the if I'm not mistaken, for the first time all season, Brent Brennan is not just retweeting. Brent Brennan has been quote tweeting, and he is getting absolutely annihilated in those comments. Again, this is a guy that's done no fan engagement his entire tenure here, and he admitted it. He said, "Yeah, that's not my job to do it. Fine." So when he's going out on the road recruiting, he then puts out that he's out on the road recruiting, and he gets absolutely ratioed in his own comments by Arizona football, or just by Arizona fans. And again, this is then he puts something out about the triathlon team. He's just going to get annihilated, and it's too little, too late with that. Your opportunity to be able to build something with this community was when you came in here, and you talked about it from day one about how you've never taken a job more seriously. All of this clearly. So again, you're the CEO, head coach. What exactly are you CEOing? Because you don't call the offense, you don't call the defense. You're not engaged with the fan base at all. And you weren't going to. You weren't going to be you haven't been engaged in the fan base at all. And not only that, I don't know exactly what you've been doing. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I think and we're going to get to our predictions here in a second. But if you look at this team and you look at Brent Brennan and you can get the money, I think you got to pull the trigger. I think you got to get rid of them. And a big part of it too is people are like, well, what would you do then with somebody like Humberto or something? Would you, if he comes to you and gives you the money, are you going to, would you give him something like veto power? And yeah, I would give him veto power because, again, I think it's more important to get rid of Brent Brennan because I don't think anybody could be worse than Brent Brennan. And from what he's done, from everything we've seen. So, and something too that really kind of bothers me too is how he's throwing, he's blaming injuries. He never blamed injuries when he's at San Jose State. He's now talking about how maybe this team wasn't as good as we previously thought on and off record. I mean, again, he just isn't really, there's nothing about him that really reeks any form of competence or confidence, and that's the problem. How do you sell Arizona this offseason? How do you say, listen, man, I know it was a historically disappointing season this year. How do you sell Arizona going forward? And that's something that I don't know that you can. I don't know that that's something that you can really sell. As a matter of fact, I think it's next to impossible to be able to sell that, and I think that's why this is so concerning if you're an Arizona football fan, because there is nothing to really be able to sell. Now, we're going to talk about what Arizona football needs going into the Houston game. Can they get back on track? But first, before any of that, we're going to talk about FanDuel. All right, now let's talk about FanDuel for a second. Here's the great idea. Here's the great thing with FanDuel. You can put down $5, just $5, and you can get $150 in free plays if your bet hits. That simple, that easy. Check out FanDuel. The great thing about FanDuel is that you can bet on college, you can bet on the pros, you can bet on pretty much anything. You know your money's good, you can get the payment back almost immediately. And the good folks at FanDuel are, like I said, they've been around. There's a reason that people use FanDuel, and again, there's a reason that they are put together with some of the absolute best people in the world, because FanDuel.com is where it's at. Check it out, FanDuel. Again, if you got a hunch, this is the place that you're going to want to play it, FanDuel. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now. Let's talk a little bit about where Arizona is then with Houston. Now, Houston's not a good team, but Houston's better than Arizona. It's wild to say, but Arizona's probably the worst team in the Big 12. Actually, they are the worst team in the Big 12. Look at what Kansas did. I don't think that you could sit here and say that Arizona would do that. Every team seems to be getting better while Arizona is getting worse. Then you have the coach that every single presser is kind of saying the same thing. And again, handing out orange slices, handing out, he just, like I said, there's just really there's no reason to really look at Brent Brennan and be like, oh, cool. But there we go. I got to get a pen. Hold on. But in the Houston game, though, the problem though is that I think at this point the defense is so worn down, and I think I think that's a problem. The defense being so worn down, but also this is also a team that is offensively, it's just getting worse and worse. Noah is completely out of rhythm. Even when guys are open, Noah's not able to find them. And I put that completely on the coaching staff. I put that entirely on the coaching staff because, again, I've seen Noah Fafita. We've all seen Noah Fafita. This is somebody that is incredibly cerebral, somebody that understands where the next play should go, and that you're not getting any of that now. And I think that's what is so disconcerting about that. So I don't see anything from this coaching staff that indicates that they are going to be able to get that one fixed. Now, the next one that I think you have to look at is, what kind of has this team given up? I don't think this team's given up, but I do think they are counting down the days. I think there's a lot of guys where it's like, all right, we're going to be out of here, and we're going to be out of here in short order. Let's just kind of grit our teeth and then just get the heck out of Dodge. That's where I think it's more of it. I don't think you've got guys that are giving up because I still think the character of the players on this team is quite high. The problem, like I said, though, just is that this is a squad. This is a team that basically doesn't have a leader. And that goes back to Brent Brennan. As the head coach, you're supposed to be the leader. Say what you want about Jed Fish, but everybody knew, disagree or not, where the buck stood with, and it was with Jed Fish. He was the head of the program. Brent Brennan feels far more of just kind of a mediator, and maybe I'm a consigliere type. I don't know. But either way, it's bad. I would expect Houston to win this game. I'm not picking Arizona to win any game going forward because there's really no reason to believe it. The Central Florida one, that to me was absolutely rock bottom. Again, it's a bad team, 56-12, and I keep going back. It's the 12 points that continuously gets me. How do you only score 12 points when you've got the best wide receiver in the country, when you got a decent running game, when you've got guys on the offensive line that can play? That to me is just where the biggest problem. And again, Central Florida, these aren't world beaters. We're not talking about good teams. So again, Houston kind of in that same boat. I think with Houston, you're hoping that Arizona can play well enough to be able to win, but I'm not picking Arizona at any point now. If I was on FanDuel and I wasn't biased, I would absolutely pick against Arizona. Also, the thing about it that we've seen too is when Arizona gets hit, there is absolutely no response. You don't look at this coaching staff and say, man, they got all the right pieces in play. They're going to be able to get this. So if Arizona does get blown out in this game, I think that the fan base is very quickly going to start calling for Brennan to be let go. And it'll be interesting to see. Do the donors, do the boosters come in there and say, listen, yeah, we've seen enough. You can't go into next season with this guy. We're going to find out. But this to me is and we've said this like a million times, I get it. But this is another one that's kind of a crossroads game, kind of has a crossroads game feel to it that, listen, if you don't win this game, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And again, I guess my thing now is just be competitive. Now, I know going into the season, if we were to say just be competitive at home against Houston, you'd probably be like, the heck are you talking about? Are you talking about basketball? But no, we're talking about football, and that's a little bit of the problem. All right, so that's kind of where it's at. I think this is a massive game for Arizona football. Then we're going to talk tomorrow. We're going to talk about Arizona basketball. We're going to talk about how it matches up with Wisconsin. This is a big win. This is a big game. This is the first time all season that Arizona basketball has played a good team. It's obviously going into a tough home court environment. In Madison, Wisconsin. Arizona destroyed Wisconsin last year. Can they destroy them again this year? I think that's the question that so many people are going to want answered. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if Arizona's going to be able to annihilate them or not. So we will see. But Arizona has better players than Wisconsin. So that is something that should be they have going forward. And then remember Friday, You got Arizona, Houston in football after Arizona, Wisconsin in basketball. So we have a full week coming up, and we're going to keep you all up to date on that. But like I said, just wanted to get back to football, talk about where things are in this off week, and talk about the importance of this Houston game, because if Arizona gets annihilated, I just don't know how. I don't know how you do it, but I also don't know how you can bring back Brent Brennan. We'll find out how this all goes down. But on that note, though, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow, TTFN.